morning, student. Today we will discuss about the growth of India's nationalism. So before we will discuss about the nationalism, we will see the introductions. What was the situations of India before the arrival of British, as well as what factors promoted the growth of nationalism? All these questions we will discuss here. So one of the most distinguishing or important features of the second half of the 19th century was the birth of India's nationalism. Well, it originated from the concept of nationalism, or the right of self-determination that initiated by French Revolution. Number two, the socio-religious reform movement, and another one, the British rule, British oppressive policies. So these three important things help to develop the concept of nationalism. Next, we will discuss the factors. The factors which promoted the growth of nationalism. Many factors played an important role behind the growth of nationalism in India. But before we will discuss the factors, you have to know what do you mean by nationalism. The nationalism refers to the feelings of oneness and the common consciousness that emerge when the people of India live together and share the same historical, political, and cultural background, as well as also have the same language, cultural value, and consider themselves as a one nation. That is called nationalism. So factors which promoted the growth of nationalism, like economic exploitation, number two, repressive colonial policies, then socio-religious reform movements, and then number four, role of press, many other factors like Western education. So here today we will discuss about these four causes which are most important. So first let's start discuss the economic exploitations. But there were many factors that arose the opposition to the British rule. But the economic exploitation was the most important among them. And the Indian realized that general aim of the British policy in India was to promote their own interest in the cost of Indians. Next is, so every sections of the Indian societies were actually exploited by the British economic policies. So one by one we will discuss. First we will discuss the peasants, then artisans and the craftsmen. Then number three we will discuss about the working class, and fourth is the educated people or educated Indians. So first is the peasants. So peasants were the main victims of the British economic policy or colonial policies, because the government took away their large part of produce as a revenue, as a tax. So these exorbitant taxes led the peasants into a clutches of the moneylenders as well as landlords, so that made their life more miserable. Next, number two, the craftsmen and the artisans. The craftsmen and artisans were also ruined and they became unemployed. They lost their ancestral business. How? When British established their power in India, their political control over India, they forced India to export a raw material for the British industry. So they process the raw materials in their industry, manufacture goods by machines, and then flooded the Indian markets. But on the other hand, the Indian artisans and the craftsmen produce goods by hand. That is very costly. So Indian craftsmen and artisans were unable to compete with the British machine-made goods. So they suffered a lot under British policies. Next is number three, third section, working class. But during this period, the growth of the modern industries, a new class emerged in the society, and they were called the working class. But their numerical strength was very less. But their outlook, their political consciousness was far more better than the other sections of the society. Why we are telling? Because these peoples were actually suffered due to the low wages that paid by the mill or work industries owner, and at that time most of the industries owners were Britishers or Europeans. They paid a very low wages to them. So as well, why I am telling, their outlook, their political consciousness was far broad than any other section, because the industries were located in different parts of the country, and that enriched their outlook or broadened their mental outlook. Next is number four, fourth section, that educated Indians. The only employment opportunity was available for the educated people, because the job was few at that time, but job seekers were many. So that is why there was a steep competition for few jobs. But the educated Indians believed that the British was a capitalist country. Britain was a capitalist country, and the British did well, developed well, were in Britain, and they also felt that they also do the same thing with India. But later on, their idea became wrong, and they realized instead of developing India, British were the main responsible. Britishers were the responsible to keeping India economically backwards. So, thus, all sections of the Indian society felt that their economic salvation, economic freedom, lying to free themselves from the British control. And without the participations of everyone, it is impossible to achieve this objective. Now, next factor, we will discuss the repressive colonial policies of the British. But the nature of the British colonial rule over India helped the growth of nationalism, national sentiments among the Indians. Why I am telling? Because one thing I forgot to tell you in introduction, before the arrival of British, India was ruled by different ruler. India was fragmented, and different parts of the country was ruled by different ruler. So different rulers, people had a faith or loyalty to their own ruler, and the peoples also hated the other region people. But when British came, they brought whole India under their control, under the same rule, and the peoples came closer, and then the closeness, commonness emerged among the Indians, and that helped them to rise the feelings of nationalism, as well as some of the British policies, and especially when the interest of the British clashed with the Indians, then that things actually help Indian to come closer. So under British rule, the feelings of nationalism emerged. So now we will see the repressive policies. So the British had conquered India to promote their own interest, and therefore they followed the repressive policies to make India a subservient to the British interest. Subservient to the British interest. Especially some of the policies taken by Lord Lytton. Number one, Lord Lytton organized a Grand Delhi Darbar. When Grand Delhi Darbar organized in 1877 to proclaim Queen Victoria as an Empress of India. So that purpose he spent lakhs of rupees. But at the same time, India was suffered due to famine. But he did nothing to rescue the people from that situation. Next is number two. Number two, in 1878, Lord Lytton passed two acts. One, the Vernacular Press Act. Another one, the Indian Arms Act. So what was the Vernacular Press Act? But according to Vernacular Press Act, the vernacular press were forbid to publish anything that might cause excitement among the Indians against British. And if the vernacular press publish such things, then British will take a action against such press. So this is a kind of restriction imposed against the press. Next, next is Indian Arms Act. What was the Arms Act? According to this act, British are without the permissions of keeping arms, that's a criminal offense. And if any Indian keep arms without any license or carrying arms without any license, that will be a criminal offense and British can arrest that person. But this law, these two laws, Vernacular Press Act and the Arms Act was not applicable for the Britishers or the Europeans. Next, number four. Number four, the maximum age limit for ICSE examination, Indian Civil Service, that earlier was 21 years and he reduced to 19 years. And that made it difficult for an Indian to compete such a tough examination in India at only 19 years age. So next is number 5. The import duties on the British textiles were also removed. And this proved harmful for the Indian industries or Indians to compete with the British industries. Next, another one is the Ilbert Bill controversy. Sir C.P. Ilbert passed a bill in 1883 and that bill was popularly known as Ilbert Bill. What was that bill? First time the right given to the Indian judges, according to that bill, first time right given to the Indian judges, now they could try the cases where Europeans are involved. Or Europeans were involved. But when that right given, then all the Europeans people in India, especially, they opposed that bill because they felt they were superior and Indians were inferior. So they don't have a right to judge an European. So due to the pressure of the European communities, British government forced or bound to withdraw that bill, and that was popularly known as Ilbert Bill controversy. And that controversy or withdrawal of that bill that clearly indicated that under British rule, India should not expect any kinds of justice or equality. Next, so these oppressive policies of the British also provided a stimulus to a political agitation and quickened the pace of the Indian nationalism. Next is third point, the socio-religious reform movement. So the socio-religious reform movements of the 19th century also played a very important role, or we can say the great pioneer of the Indian nationalism. Why? Which is the impact of the Western educations which led to the rational, humanitarian and scientific approach to life, and that made the educated Indians realize the need to reform the religion and the society. And they felt that the progress is lying by taking good principles of both from east as well as west. And that is completely wrong. Nothing is good in east. Everything good where? In west. Wrong. In both, the culture have a good principles. And we have to take from both if we want to progress. So the result was the birth of socio-religious reform movements that touching almost every segments of the Indian society, and lot of changes were brought in social as well as in religious sphere. What were the changes brought in social sphere? In social sphere, they stopped child marriage, they banned sati, female infanticides, they introduced the widow remarriage, they started women education, etc. And in religious sphere, reform movements combated the religious superstitions as well as attacked the idolatry, polytheism. Polytheism means worship many gods. Then the hereditary priesthoods. So all these changes brought in religious sphere. Next, prominent reform movements were actually Brahma Samaj, then founded by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, then Arya Samaj founded by Dayanand Saraswati, as well as Ramakrishna Mission founded by Swami Vivekananda. Satya Sadak Samaj was founded by Jyotiba Phule. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy, here we will discuss about two. One is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, another one is Jyotiba Phule. So these two persons played a very important role in India's nationalism or spread of socio-religious reform movement. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was one of the greatest social and the religious reformer of the 19th century. So that is why he was actually rightfully called as a pioneer of the Indian nationalism, or he was also called the father of Indian Renaissance. So he wanted to do away with the religious and the social evils which were prevalent in Bengal at that time. So in 1828 he established the Brahma Sabha, and that later on renamed as a Brahma Samaj. And the Brahma Samaj believed in monotheism, that means one God. It condemned idol worship, caste system. It emphasized on prayer, meditation, charity, morality, etc. Ram Mohan Roy was against the rigidity of the caste system that was prevalent in Hindu society at that time. He started a campaign for the abolition of sati and parda system, and due to his initiative, in 1829, Lord William Bentinck passed an act and banned sati, and then he also opposed that just mentioned child marriage, and he advocated for widow remarriage. Next is Jyotiba Phule, another one social reformer. So Jyotiba Phule was an urban educated member of so-called lower caste, and his education and personal experiences made him a critical towards the Hindu religion. And in 1854, he established a school for untouchables and started a private orphanage for the widows. He wanted to liberate the depressed class people, and that could be possible only by educating them. So he also founded a society that was known as Satya Sadak Samaj in 1873 with the main objective was to secure justice for the weaker sections of the society. And he was also played an important role for the widow remarriage in Maharashtra. So that is why he was popularly known as he was one of the renowned social reformer. So next is how the socio-religious reform movements contributed to the growth of nationalism. But number one, Swami Dayanand and Swami Vivekananda both proclaimed the superiority of the Indian culture as well as the Indian civilization. Next is number two. Number two, the reformers Reformers condemned the untouchability and they promoted the idea of brotherhood, universal brotherhood, and that brought the lower caste people closer to the upper caste peoples. Next is number three. Number three, the reformers taught people not to ignore the importance of women because they could participate in the national movement. Next is number four. Number four, the reform movement drew the inspirations from the India's cultural heritage as well as the promoted a feeling of pan-Indian and the spirit of nationalism. Next, fourth point, the role of press. So, the press also played a very important role behind the growth of nationalism. Behind the growth of nationalism. So, in the late 19th century or the later half of the 19th century, many vernacular newspapers were actually published and they played a very important role. The newspapers like Amrit Bazar Patrika, the Bengali Tribune, Pioneer, the Statesman, Times of India, the Hindu, etc. So, this new next, how they played an important role in this growth of nationalism and these newspapers. But the number one, this news, it was through the newspaper or the press, the message of patriotism and the modern liberal ideas like liberty, equality, fraternity, nationalism, democracy, all these ideas were actually spread in entire country. Number two, press also carried a daily criticism of the British unjust policy. Next is number three, it made possible to exchange the views among the different social groups from different parts of the country and organizing the political movements. Next, number four, it made Indians aware of what was happening in outside their country. That means in the world. So these were the important factors behind the growth of nationalism. Now we will discuss about the growth of political association. Growth of political association. So Raja Rammohn Roy was the pioneer of the political movements in India and he demanded the liberty of the press, appointments of the Indians in the civil courts as well as in other higher posts and codifications of the Indian laws. So before the establishments or formations of the Indian National Congress, many associations were came up. And the first association which was established in 1838 that was known as the Landlord Society. Where? In Kolkata. Next, after that, many other associations were established like Bengal British India Association, a society, then British India Association, East India Association, Indian Association, then All India National Conference, Madras Association, Bombay Association, Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, many. But one thing you have to remember, all these associations were localized in nature, as well as the participation also limited within the middle class educated people. So there was a constant realization for an all India association. But we will discuss about that. But before that, we will discuss about three important associations which were considered the precursors of the Indian National Congress or forerunners of the Indian National precursors. So, first is East India Association. It was founded in 1866 by Dadabhai Naoroji. So, the association provided the informations on all Indians subject to the British citizens and the members of parliament. Why? It voiced the grievances of Indians and suggested the remedial measures. Dadabhai Naoroji believed that the Britishers were basically just and good, and he felt that if he present the India's problem before the British citizens and the members of the parliament, maybe resolve the India's problem. So the association had many branches, were in Mumbai, Kolkata, as well as Chennai. Next, number two, Number two, the Indian Association. This association was founded by Surendranath Banerjee in 1876. Where? In Kolkata. So the association had the members, lawyers, then professionals, as well as educated middle class. And main objectives of this association, main objective number one was creation of a strong body of a public opinion. Next, number two, the integration of the Indian people on the basis of their common political interest. Number three, mass participation in the public movement. And number four, promotion of friendly relations between Hindu and Muslims. So these four were the main objectives of Indian Association. And this association raised their voice against the Arms Act, Vernacular Press Act, lowering the age for civil service examinations everywhere. Now next is the Indian National Conference. So this association also founded by Surendranath Banerjee in 1883. So it was a provincial organization. It offered a model to the Indian National Congress, which was founded 2 years later. That means in 1885. So National Congress held its session. National Conference held its second session in 1885 in Calcutta, and during the same time, the Indian National Congress session was held in 1885 Mumbai, and after 2 years in 1886, these two associations were merged together because their interest and the purpose was same. That is why. Next, we will discuss the formation of the Indian National Congress. So the various political, I just a few minutes ago discussed the various political organizations were established or founded in different parts of the country before the formation of Indian National Congress. But you have to remember, all were localized in nature, as well as the demands also localized. They were only asking demands for their particular region. They had some specific demands. They didn't ask demand for the entire country. So that is why some nationalist leaders like Surendranath Banerjee, Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, everyone actually wanted there should be a national organization or association that will ask demand for the entire country, that will work for the entire country. And that realization led the Indian leaders to establish an national organization. But at that time, help came from an unknown source. And that unknown person was A.O. Hume, Alan Octavian Hume. And he took the initiative for the formation of an All India Association. All India Association. And Hume wrote an open letter to the graduates of Calcutta University and asking them to dedicate themselves to the service of the people by forming a union to organize a well-defined course of action. And this appeal produced a desired result. And then the conference was held, meeting was held between 28th to 31st December 1885, where Mumbai Gokul Tejpal Sanskrit College. And 76 delegates were actually present from different parts of the country, and in their presence, Indian National Congress was established in 1885, 31st December. 31st December. But the question is, why British? Alan Octavian Hume was a retired British officer. Why and British took the initiative for the formation of an All India Association? So in this occasion, Viceroy Lord Dufferin favored the formation of Indian National Congress because he wanted it to act as a safety valve for the popular discontent. The British intention was they wanted to know the grievances of the people grievances of the people, and then they could pacify them by giving them some demands or their wishes, so they can prevent the further revolt like the revolt of 1857, because British feared very much the revolt of 1857, because that gave a shake of their empire in India. So they didn't expect such kind of revolt in future, so that is why they formed an association that could inform the demands, wishes of the people, so they could pacify them and prevent the further revolt. So this association will act as a safety valve for British Empire in India. So the main aims and objective, but later on it's came to know that, or came to know actually later on, the Congress, All India Congress, become and the center of wish and aspirations of the Indians instead of British Association. Later on, this association became the center of wish and aspiration. And the people started with the hope. They hoped this association will bring a freedom for the Indians. So next we will see the objectives of the Indian National Congress. Objectives of the Indian National Congress. Main objectives. Number one, to promote a friendly relations between the nationalist political workers in the different parts of the country. Number two, to develop and consolidate the feelings of national unity irrespective of caste, religion or provinces. Next is number three, to formulate the popular demands and present them before the British governments. And number four, to train and organize the public opinion in the country. And every year Congress held a session in different parts of the country. And the first session held 1885 Mumbai Gokuldas Tejpal Sanskrit College, presided over by who was president? Umesh Chandra Banerjee. And in second session was held where? Kolkata in 1886, and that was presided over by Dadabhai Naoroji. So I hope all of you understand, student. So if you have any queries, you can ask me. Thank you.